Welcome to another video, guys. Today, I'd like you to meet someone very special that could help you out. Mr. Amit Sevak, who's been leading ETS for the last 6 months. ETS, of course, is the creator of the tests like GRE and TOEFL, and many other tests that help you guys assess your education and really move on to studying abroad and do much, much more. Mr. Amit, please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here, Yash. Thank you very much for this opportunity to spend some time with your subscribers and your viewers. My name is Amit Sevak. I have the privilege of serving as the new CEO for ETS, Educational Testing Service. ETS was founded 75 years ago. It was actually founded the same year that India became independent in 1947. Over these last 75 years, ETS has served tens of millions of students throughout the world to take an assessment, to take a test, to better demonstrate their skills for study abroad and also for working abroad. So I'm really grateful to be here. I'm based in the United States on the East Coast, and India is a very important market for us. We look to serve the country as much as we can in so many ways. And again, I'm really grateful to be on the show today. Thanks, Yash.
All right, Amit, I'd really like to know essentially what inspired you to take up the role of CEO at ETS and essentially how your journey has been so far.
So thanks for the question, Yash. I got inspired to take on this role at ETS because I really believe that this is an important time of disruption of the testing industry. Right? For so long, testing was something you did as a chore. It was stressful. It could be a long test. It was something you did in a classroom, pencil and paper. And really the audience that the test was about pleasing your parents, showing it to your teacher, right? Giving the school information, or maybe it was for an admissions officer someplace else, or a hiring manager. And I really believe that the shift is happening now away from all of those stakeholders. They're still important, but now there's much more of a shift on the student. And I think that testing needs to also shift to become more about the student. How can we have good customer experience? How can we have shorter tests? How can we have tests that are much more innovative, much more interactive, use simulation? Maybe testing is less about filling out bubbles on a page and more about presentation. Maybe it's more about project-based learning. So the world of assessments is going through a radical change right now. I also feel really called to do this because I really believe that we want to measure what matters. Education matters. And this is a moment right now when we can use the data that comes from testing to help give feedback, to help schools improve, to help teachers get more support, and to help students learn better. So it's really a shift to the student and a shift to the use of data in a responsible way to help push education more generally.
Sounds great. It actually makes a lot of sense as well. And personally, when I actually took my TOEFL and the GRE, which I've taken both of these tests, I took TOEFL twice actually, GRE once, I really felt the difference when you compare the Indian version of taking the tests, what's been pushed in these schools, and essentially what we did on a global scale. Essentially, these tests are running on a global scale, I believe, serving millions of people every single year. So I really felt the difference essentially in that test when I was taking them. And that really opened my eyes to essentially a new side of assessment as well.
You know, what you're sharing is a demonstration of what people in India know, right? We recognize that TOEFL is a good quality exam. It's a pathway to many other parts of the world, not just the US or Canada, but you can take the TOEFL to go to the UK. You can take the TOEFL to go to Australia. There are 10,000 universities throughout the world that recognize TOEFL. It's recognized in over 120 countries. So what you're representing about the opportunities to go to the different parts of the world with TOEFL to have a good experience is something we're very proud of. And also for the GRE. But the GRE continues to be the standard for high quality assessment to enter graduate programs. We're very proud of the fact that the GRE now is being recognized for business schools, for example, not just abroad, but also here in India. IIM Ahmedabad, IIM Calcutta, IIM Bangalore, SP Jain, and many other institutions. The ISB is also recognizing the GRE as a way to get entrance to those institutions. So I'm happy to hear that you had a good experience with both TOEFL and GRE.
All right, sounds great. I mean, I'm also curious about what do you do to actually relax when you're taking some time off?
No, well, thanks, Yash. So what is a day in the life for me? I start my day usually around 6 in the morning. And the first thing I like to do is to just for a few minutes meditate. It's something that I first learned from my grandmother. And she, when she shifted from India to the US, wanted to make sure her grandchildren had some of that Indian orientation to meditation. And so myself, my brothers, my cousins, all got a little bit of exposure initially from our grandmother. And that stayed with me. And I realized as I was getting through schooling, and particularly started working, that opportunity just to center myself for just a couple of minutes, to clear my thoughts, to get organized, it made me more clear, more focused, more able to respond to things in a more relaxed way. So I like that anchor activity first thing in the morning. I then usually get started, usually around 7:30. I'm already checking email, and I'm pretty much up and running. Because I'm working in the US, but a lot of our work is global, it's an opportunity as early as 8 o'clock in the morning or so for me to be on calls.
Right.
So, you know, a call at 8 o'clock in the morning in the US is around the late afternoon here in India.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of work with India, a lot of work in the Middle East and other parts of the world. So I'm usually doing more international calls in the mornings. And then as the midday and afternoon, then I'm doing some of the calls and meetings with my colleagues. I spend a lot of my time trying to balance between internal activity and external activity. I think one of the things I learned is that it's really important for individuals in a company, in an organization, to recognize that while you collaborate and coordinate a lot with your colleagues, a big part of really being able to support the mission and the goals that you have is to also have that external connectivity, to be in touch with other internals, whether it's a customer or a partner or a collaborator. So I always try when I'm making my schedule of a typical day to try to make sure some portion of the day is outside. And of course, I try when I'm not traveling to be home for dinner and spend time with the kids. I'm married with 3 kids, so I want to make sure I'm home as much as I can during the evenings as well, just to hang out to wrap up the day.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you look at almost any CEO's schedule today for any of the big companies, starting with very good point, you mentioned meditation, it almost always, you know, at some point in their life, they try to inculcate it. And I think when we have that common denominator, it's really something that even students can gain help from if they're actually inculcating that in their schedule.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes meditation is thought of as something you have to do off in a corner someplace or in your room or when it's dark or when you're alone. But you know what? While you're asking that question, I just took a couple of quick breaths. And that's an exercise to just help me get centered so that I can answer your question. But I can't stress enough, if you're a student out there or you're getting started in your career, I would really encourage you to begin a practice, even a small one, even a couple of breaths at key moments, even opportunities at the beginning and the end of the day. It really is a habit. It's a habit that really centers you. It allows you to be less reactive, more proactive. But most importantly, it allows you to really be yourself. Because our minds are constantly wandering and jumping into all things, but a chance just to recenter allows you to take control of the situation. So I think it's a super powerful thing. I think I'm grateful that I learned it from my grandmother.
Yeah, especially, you know, in India, mental health is really underrated sometimes when it comes to testing, and there's a lot of competition, so I think it really would help the viewers as well. And I would personally, actually, I also personally recently started a little bit, but may not be as good as you, but
No, it's
I'm
good.
trying to inculcate it.
And it's great to do a little bit of meditation before you take a test,
Yeah.
and even to breathe when you're taking the test. So I think whether you're taking the TOEFL or the GRE, that practice might even incorporate into the before and during process as well.
Right, right. All right, sounds great. I also wanted to know, tests like TOEFL, they're a very huge part of the preparation essentially and the whole study abroad process of a student. Getting the admission itself, TOEFL test is a very important part of that. Almost no university would actually take up a student internationally without having a TOEFL evaluation essentially because, you know, coming from our country, they would need to prove that they have a level of English that they can use to comprehend and understand exactly what's going on in the classroom. So how do you think these tests came about becoming so important as a part of the study abroad process?
It's an important question. It's a good opportunity just to take a step back. When TOEFL was launched in 1964, it was to meet a need. And the need was that institutions in the West, especially in the US, Canada, UK, were looking for a way to evaluate the English level of students who were looking to study abroad. And because there's so many schools in so many parts of the world with different standards in terms of English, it was a chance to have a single assessment, a single test to measure your level of competency in the 4 areas of English, reading and writing, speaking and listening. So that's how TOEFL started. It started as a way to help the student demonstrate their level of competency and for the institution to be able to have one assessment that they can use to help evaluate candidates coming from so many different diverse backgrounds. And over the years, TOEFL became recognized as the gold standard for it. As I mentioned, we launched in 1964. Today, we are recognized by over 10,000 universities throughout the world, not just in the US and Canada, but really in countries like the UK, Australia, many, many countries throughout the world. 120 countries recognize TOEFL as well. So we're really proud of that, but we're only moving from strength to strength because we continue to make investments in improving the experience, in evaluating the assessments and making sure they're fair and reasonable, in making sure students have a good overall experience of it. So it is something that we're proud of, but we want to continue to make it better.
So Amit, apart from that, is the TOEFL easy or hard? What do you think?
But what do you think, Yash?
Personally, when I took the test, it took me just about 2 weeks of preparation. And those 2 weeks were actually enough for me to take my score from somewhere around, when I first took an initial mock test, I was somewhere around a 95. And from there, I could go to the actual test to an actual score of 119 out of 120, I think, which inherently, I think it's more of an English language test, essentially, to the very raw core of it. And essentially, as long as you are able to speak and understand and comprehend English on a daily basis, it shouldn't be very hard.
I think you've just proven the point, right? And so I often get asked this question, and I think you've just proven the point. With just a couple of weeks of preparation, you were able to get from an initial score to a much higher score that would be widely accepted throughout the world. And I think that's an important point. It's just a little bit of preparation and focus can allow you to really get to the score level that you want to get. We do a lot to help provide test prep out there through ourselves plus our partners. We do a lot of work in test prep, and we encourage some preparation. But most importantly, relax, take the test, enjoy it. Know it's at a high quality, and that quality is something that is a signal for those around you. So I'd really encourage taking the TOEFL, getting a little bit of practice, and as you just said, you felt it was easy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, tests like TOEFL are actually used by most of the students in India to move overseas, right? And one question I personally wanted to ask you is, what do you think? Is it really worth going through the ordeal? Because it's not the easiest thing to do, right? Studying abroad for an Indian student, they have a lot of things in mind. Sometimes they have to take on loans. Sometimes there's a lot of pressure from their family. They don't want to leave their family as well. But I think it does inculcate a lot of growth in these students, right? At the end of the day, it's an everlasting experience with them. So what would you say? Is it really something that every student should be focusing on?
It's an awesome question. This is a big opportunity right now to look at international study opportunities. You can study abroad for a summer or for a short program. You can study for a semester, or you can study for a full program, undergraduate or graduate degree program. And to me, Ash, the reason why I think it's such a great opportunity is because it just opens your mind. It expands your horizons in a way that I believe that very few things can do. When you're immersed in another school environment, you're meeting new people, you're interacting in a different way, you're really submerged or immersed in a completely different culture. And so for me, I think that's great. You get to strengthen your English, you get to expand your depth in one particular domain, whether you're interested in engineering, pre-med, or the liberal arts. You get exposed to a whole range of areas, professors, new cultural experiences. You get to do trips to different parts on weekends and so forth. And I think that really expands you. You know, companies more and more are seeking global experience. And whether you decide to stay abroad or come back home, come back to India, that global experience stays with you. It really stays inside of you. People talk a lot about global citizenship, and that's what it is. It's a way to become a global citizen by getting a little bit of that international experience.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. Personally also, the experience that I had, it was really growth-inducing. The kind of people I met, I think it's very difficult to meet certain kind of people when you're really focused on one part of the world and you're staying there all your life, right? When you move overseas, you see different cultures, you see how things are done in a different part of the world. Sometimes they're way different than we do it, but yeah, it really changed me for the better, I think.
Yeah.
And I would personally advise anyone watching this to...
And you know, Yash, I'm the product of study abroad. My parents came from Gujarat and moved to the States.
Well,
and
that's really good.
and I grew up there.
Yeah.
And so it was because of international education. I'm grateful to the institution that my father went by bringing him to the U.S. And I'm very grateful that he decided to stay and allow me to have this connectivity to both India but also to the U.S. So I feel very fortunate that I'm now in a role where I'm able to promote international education and study abroad through the types of tests that we offer, like the TOEFL and the GRE.
Yeah, I did read about it, actually. I think you went to Harvard Business School for your MBA, right?
That's
Your experience
right.
must have been really amazing over there, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you.
So Amit, I also understand that TOEFL has come to be accepted for immigration purposes in Australia. Is that correct? Or?
That's right,
Yeah?
Yash, yes. So TOEFL is accepted for immigration in Australia. It's also accepted in other countries like New Zealand, like Ireland, and many more countries are coming. So absolutely, TOEFL is not only a pathway for study abroad to go to a university, it also is for countries an opportunity for immigration. And more countries are coming that are accepting TOEFL for immigration. It's just recognized as a global standard.
Sounds great, sounds great. Apart from that, I do understand that ETS India has separate initiatives focusing within India itself. So what would you say, according to your knowledge, in terms of ETS India? What is ETS India doing to improve the assessment within India itself?
ETS is very proud to be serving the Indian market. What's happening in India right now is amazing. You're seeing economic growth, you're seeing a lot of dynamism in the marketplace. And so there's three segments that we're seeking to serve in India. First, we're seeking to serve the K-12 market, the schools market. There are over 250 million students in India today in schools, and over 10 million teachers that are teaching in those schools. Those school students and teachers, we're seeking to serve them by providing better, more dynamic assessments that allow individuals to demonstrate their competencies, their skills as they're progressing through their schools. And also for teachers, we see lots of opportunities to better support teachers, not only people that are interested in becoming teachers with new forms of certification and assessment offerings, but also teachers that are already teaching, particularly those in their first couple of years that are looking for assessments and tools that can help them become even more effective in the classroom. So that's on the school side. Secondly, higher education is expanding in India. Because of the 2020 NEP, the National Education Policy, which the Indian government has put in place in the year 2020, there's an explosion of demand and offerings for higher education. Currently in India, there are over 40 million students in higher education. 40 million students, already the largest in the world. But because of the NEP's push, that number is expected to double from 40 million students to 80 million students that are going to be in higher education. With so many students coming in, the over 1,000 universities and the many, many colleges in India are looking for different kinds of tests, different kinds of assessments for the admissions process to help select students to come in, for supporting the faculty, the teachers, the professors in the colleges, but also for career readiness to help ensure that those college graduates are having the skills and the certifications to help them become employable soon after their studies. So ETS is very interested in serving the Indian higher education market. And then finally, we see lots of opportunities to serve the workforce, the corporate market. And so where do we see opportunities there? We see opportunities to help companies with the hiring process. And so as they're looking at opportunities to select from lots of great candidates, assessments can become part of that. Also, to help individuals with training. When you have an assessment, you get to validate the quality of corporate training. Because it's easy to take a training program when you're working, but with an assessment that demonstrates you've learned the competency and perhaps even a certification like a badge afterwards, you have another signal. And that's good for the company, but it's also good for you, another badge, something you can put on as you advance in your career. So we're looking, Yash, to serve those three segments, the K-12 market, the higher education market, and also the worker market with better, more innovative, more flexible assessments. We're also very excited to announce, Yash, that we just announced an important new initiative with the Ministry of Education in India. So the Indian government, through its NCERT, has recently launched an initiative called PARAK. And PARAK is to set new norms, new guidelines for how assessments are going to be done in education across India. So Yash, for us, this is extremely exciting because they selected us. Through a competitive process, they selected ETS to provide guidelines and support for the initiation of all of these new assessments that are coming. So in addition to the K-12, higher ed, and workforce market, we're also really proud to now be supporting the government on its important quest to really strengthen education in India through better, more dynamic, more flexible assessments. So we have lots of initiatives. We launched our ETS India office just a little over a year ago, and we're going to continue to make other investments in the country.
So Amit, being successful is the goal of almost every student out there today. And it can be a little bit difficult as well because there's a lot of competition. And if you're studying abroad, you may already have a loan on your head. You already may have the pressure of finding a job and networking. And there's a lot of things that students have to do that they're not used to doing in our country by default. So running the largest testing assessment company in the world, how would you measure success? And what is the one piece of advice that you would have for students nowadays who are going through today's day and age and studying overseas?
How would I measure success? That's a very good question. It's also partly a philosophical question, no? I would measure success on a few dimensions. I would measure success on personal goals, on professional goals. I might also look at societal goals. And for me, when I think about what I'm looking to achieve personally, how I define success is across those three metrics. So, for example, on the personal front, I'm looking to make sure I'm staying healthy. And so I'm a vegetarian, I try to exercise, I try to do things that keep me going. On the personal front, I want to make sure I spend enough time with my family, my wife, my kids, my parents, my brothers, the broader family.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm learning, that I'm learning new things. It's very easy to fall into the habits of just working all the time or just sticking with what you know, but through reading and intentionally exploring new things. So those are examples of ways I try to measure making progress on the personal front. On the professional front, I'm looking to really have impact in the organizations that I've been serving in. And so that impact can be in terms of the number of customers or students that I'm serving. I'm trying really hard in any organization that I work in to really measure success of employee satisfaction so that employees feel good. And so in addition to other metrics, such as the financial health of the organization or the ongoing reach of the organization to new markets, for example, those are some examples of professional success. And then finally, societally, I think it's important that we're all in this day and age really thinking about how can we impact the world at large, the societal impact, with the issues in the environment, with the issues in the economic context. There's so many opportunities to serve. And as someone whose last name is Sevak, one who serves, I just feel really strong that we all have an opportunity to think about that personal impact goal. And so that could be, for example, for me, contributing time, contributing resources to causes I believe in. I really believe in the importance of people being actively engaged in civics, for example, understanding what's happening in the world. What are the news stories that are happening? Voting, staying engaged in the local community. I'm very passionate about education, of course. So many topics in education really interest me, especially individuals that don't have access to good education. How do we give them access? What kind of innovative ways can we expand the reach for people to get access? So those are just some examples of what I look for. So I think those are my three broad buckets of how I measure success: personal success metrics, professional success metrics, and then also the societal success metrics. In terms of broad advice, I would suggest, Yash, that you really find your passion. And I know people say that all the time, right? Find your passion. But it's really true. The sooner in life you can find that thing that really makes you tick, that thing that gives you clarity, that thing that just flows for you, the better you'll be. Because the sooner you find that, the more you'll have clarity on your purpose. They say that you're born twice in this world. Once, when you come out of your mom, and the second, when you know why. And it's that sense of purpose, that sense of like, I'm passionate and I have a purpose to go do something in this world, whether it's being a filmmaker or an artist or running ETS or whatever that topic might be, to feel that sense of like, I'm here because I have a purpose to do something. And that wakes me up, that gets me up at 6 a.m., that makes me want to keep doing things until I go to bed. That just, it motivates me. So finding that sooner, and that process I've come to learn is a iterative process. It doesn't necessarily happen in one day or in one moment, but it's something that if you don't feel you have that clarity of your purpose or your passion, that you're spending time journaling, you're spending time talking to folks, you're spending time listening and reading on YouTube or elsewhere about people who might be doing things, and that you're constantly asking yourself, am I doing something I'm really excited about? You only live once. And if we're fortunate to live to 80 years, to 100 years, it's such a short amount of time. It's such a short amount of time on this planet, Yash. And so having that purpose clear early in life really is the difference between moving in a world in which you're impacting the world and positively influencing from not. So I would say finding that clarity, that purpose, and really owning that and making that your calling. Having it be in every bone of your body and every cell of your body that this is why I'm here. So I think more than anything is really, really finding that purpose, that passion, that calling to serve, that calling to contribute in life.
And I think it doesn't just happen by just looking at different things. You have to really try out different things, right?
Yeah,
and you really have to go deep into various kind of things, and then you really realize what is that one specific thing that you really want to focus on. So I think for students, I think they would really love your advice again on this channel as well. And to be very honest with you, I think a lot of questions that we had about the TOEFL, the GRE, and what are the future plans of ETS, they've been covered in this video. I really think that makes a difference, because thousands of people watching this would really need to know exactly why these tests are what they are today. There's a lot of history behind them.
I think what you said, Yash, is super important, that a big part of finding that passion and that purpose is through trying and testing and exploring new things. And that's a little bit of why you might consider taking the TOEFL or taking the GRE. It's giving you options. It's giving you a chance to test your English, to test your understanding of the subject context for going to grad school. It's an opportunity for you to imagine it, because so much of finding things, finding what makes you passionate, is actually trying to visualize it. And so, these type of offerings like GRE and TOEFL is a part of that experimentation process. Is this for me or is this not for me? Take the test, figure it out. It'll give you a chance to figure things out as you go. But I think you're right. Exploring when you can, and really testing out different things is a big part of that iterative process, that experimentation process.
All right, so Amit, in conclusion, I'm ending this right now, but outside of testing, right, in terms of studying abroad and going overseas, what would you advise students?
If I had one last piece of advice, if you're going to go study abroad in a colder climate, such as the northern part of the United States, or certainly in Canada or the UK or Ireland, bring a hat, because it could get cold there, and that's one thing that I want to encourage all of my friends from India to do: wear a hat.
All right, thank you so much for coming in today. I hope to see you again on this channel. I'm sure the viewers would like to see you again as well. And for now, I think that's it for the video.
Great. Well, Yash, thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm really grateful to all of the folks that are watching today. And really, congratulations to you for having this show. Really appreciate being on the show. And hats off to all of you for a successful journey wherever you might go.